ask men these hard questions before sleeping with them. I'm really excited to be sharing this topic with my friend Laurel House, who's in the house.
That's
So welcome,
right.
Laurel.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah. By the way, folks, Laurel is the premier expert at eHarmony. She's a dating and relationship coach for 20 years. We've been friends for a very long time. So I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm excited that you were on my podcast, Man Whisperer, years ago.
Oh,
And
that's
then I
right.
sort of walked away from that. And now I'm on with you, which I'm so excited about. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's just jump into the nitty gritty. We don't need to do a lot of bios and that sort of thing. So I was watching one of your Valentine's videos and you were a guest on it. And you were talking about something that I am radically interested in. And I believe eHarmony calls it filter-free dating, and you call it red flag strategy dating. So can you kind of give my audience a little heads up to what this is?
Yeah. So according to eHarmony, this is like their finding for 2025, but it's been my finding for 20 years, which is fine. It is that this year people are pulling off the filters in terms of conversation and photos and everything else, where we are no longer afraid to talk about politics, religion, exes, your dating purpose, your red flags, because I believe I want to fly all my red flags on the first date, because if I don't, and 7 dates later, you're like, wait, you're divorced? I don't do divorced. You know what? Should have told me that first date. You wouldn't have wasted my time and your money. So it's getting into all of these real conversations before we get into any heart or hormonal issues.
Well, but you know, you and I have heard this over and over again from many of our contemporaries. A date should never be an interview. You know, it should certainly flow. It should be conversational. But now what you just described sounds a little bit like an interview. So how is this different?
It's a strategy. It's not an interview. It's a strategy. The fact is that you are going to make the most important decision of your life. Yeah. You go and have a job interview, right? And you prepare questions and you prepare answers and you're ready to go and you know exactly what you want. You're very clear on if you want this job or if you don't want this job and what you need from that job and what you're not going to give. Well, why aren't we doing that when it comes to our partner in life? So when you go into a relationship, you need to go in there with a strategy. You need to go in there prepared with questions and prepared with answers. Now, part of the strategy is I'll show you mine, now you show me yours. So you need to be the example of your expectation. I'm going to tell you all of my dirty secrets in a very strategic way that I call the U strategy, the letter U. We can go into that. And because of that, it'll make them tell me all of their deep and dirty secrets.
Okay, I want to hear about the U strategy in a moment. But, you know, a lot of people would say, coming back to a first date should just be conversational. It should just be fun. It shouldn't be pressure. And more importantly, you don't want to reveal too much to a total stranger. Right. So this strategy, though, is really about going deep as soon as possible. Would you agree?
Totally. Okay. Without question. Now, what's very interesting is that you can have seemingly innocent conversations about normal things like what do you like to do on the weekend, but you can turn it into a deep conversation by using the U strategy, because you're asking the why behind the what. The what is, oh, I like to go to the farmer's market and I like to play basketball and I like to blah, 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 blah. Who cares what. It's the why. Why do you like to do that? And the why behind that. It's the why that's interesting. It's also the why that's the connector. People generally don't connect on the what. There are way too many whats to connect on. We connect on the why beneath it, on the feeling beneath it, because there aren't that many feelings. There are a lot of actions. There aren't many feelings. So we can give our what. I don't like to do yoga because I used to do yoga. I don't like to travel as much because I used to be a travel writer. I don't like all of these things. And you're like, oh, I like to do yoga every weekend. Okay, so here are our whats. Now we're not aligned at all. But now let's get into our why behind it. And let's get down beneath that and beneath that and beneath that. And all of a sudden we realize we are really connected at our core, at what has made us who we are.
Ooh, I like this. I see you and I subscribe to the same, is we like to dig deeper. Like we take it one level and go a little deeper and take it another level and go a little bit deeper. You know, it occurs to me that there's the area where we have commonalities. And certainly where we can have differences. For example, you like yoga, I don't like yoga. You like pickleball, I don't like pickleball, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it occurs to me, and I'd like your take on this, because emotional maturity and relationship skills seem to be very lacking in human beings. In fact, it seems like we are swimming in a sea of emotional dysfunctionality in the single population.
Yeah.
So what is your strategy to, and using these techniques to get a sense of a person's emotional maturity? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, for me, I have a ton of what I call dating equations. It makes things really easy when you use an equation, because it's basically saying, you know, I know what to do. It makes something very mechanical because you're following the steps, but within the comfort of the steps, that's where you can get really, you know, you can move around like a dance, right? So if you're looking at, for one thing, is the 3 W's. Where were you? Where are you? Where are you going? So you want to, every time you go on a first date or have a first date phone date, it's where were you? Where are you? Where are you going? Where were you? That tells me what you've done, what made you you, what your pain points are, what your triggers are going to be because of the things in your past that are happening right now that I'm experiencing, because we are all fully formed adults. So all of your shit from back then, I now have to deal with. I don't know why you're blowing up for no fucking reason. Oh, it's because 10 years ago that happened to you. I see. So we need that where were you to get to where are you? And now, because you and I are talking about a future together, where are you going? And that also is something that needs to be addressed, because I want to know what, you never want to get married again. You never want, you don't want to have children. Okay, well, I do. So you need to have these conversations. Where were you? Are you going on the first date? Now, because yes, so many people are impotent when it comes to their ability to communicate and to tap into their emotional realities. We need to be the example of our expectation, and we really need to train people. And I mean, communication, we have to train them. And it doesn't mean they're not interested in you because they're not asking you the questions. It means that they don't know how to ask you the questions. Okay, fine. Sometimes they're not interested. But also, it might be that they just don't know how, or they're not comfortable. Or you mentioned politics and they're like, oh my God, no, I'm not going there because I've been trained not to. This is why my last book that I wrote is called Screwing the Rules. It's going up against the rules. It's saying, no, there are no rules when it comes to dating, but there are equations and there are strategies. So it's thinking ahead of time, you know, do the work ahead mentally so that you don't stress when you're there. And then it is, I'm very emotionally developed. I'm assuming that the people who are watching your show are also emotionally developed, or they're learning how to, right? They want to be emotionally developed. So you guys, everyone who's watching, and I'm sorry, I'm such a fast talker. I have way too much fucking information. But so you're going to take this information that we're giving you, and you're going to train the people who you are on dates with so that they can give you what you want, which is why I am the example of my expectation. Now, then you need to make sure that you turn questions over on them. So if you're like, my life, all this backstory, and then you say, and what about you? So that then they can, because if you don't say, and what about you, then they might be like, oh my, she talks so fucking much. Or if you say, and what about you? And they're like, I don't know. Then you can say, you know what? You mentioned that you and your dad don't talk that much. I'd love to, That's so curious to me. I'd love to understand why. So you're going into this with curiosity. You're going into it like an adventure of like, who is this person? I'm going to explore them.
So I want to jump in, and it seems to me, and you and I both agree, that if two people are meeting for a date, and by the way, I don't necessarily call the first time you meet someone a date. I call it a meeting, and only because I think date sometimes puts a little too much pressure on us. So we just say, hey, let's meet. But you and I were talking beforehand how it's really important to actually have if two people are, let's say, met through a dating app. So you both know you're meeting for a reason.
Yeah.
Instead of just someone that you did actually bump into at the coffee shop or whatnot.
Sure.
You and I were talking about the importance to actually ask a lot of these questions on a telephone call before you actually meet them. Do you want to lean into that for a second?
Yeah. So you need to be on purpose. Every interaction needs to be purposeful, which means if you meet on an app, you're not just, hey, how are you? Good. How are you? Good. What are you up to? Not much. Nothing is happening in this conversation. So starting from the very beginning, when you're on the app, you need to be very intentional and on purpose to be asking specific questions. So after 8 exchanges that are substantive exchanges on the app, then you're going to say, I'm really enjoying getting to know you. I'd love to take it to the next level, or I'd love to get to know you a little more how about if we have a phone date? So when you say phone date, you are letting them know this is not just a phone call whenever you feel like it. I'm not giving you my number so that you can just call me up when you feel like it. Just like on a date, you're not just both randomly showing up at a restaurant and hoping the other person is there, right? You are having a set specific time. And the reason for that is I want to be ready for our call. I want to be physically and emotionally ready to talk to you. So we're going to have a phone date. Hey, I'd love to get to know you a little bit more. How about a phone date? Does tonight at 7:00 work, or tomorrow at 6:45? If that doesn't work, why don't you let me know what works for you? So having 3 options. Then if you don't want them to have your number, you *67 your phone number so that they don't have it. And then you get on the phone and you have a date for as much as an hour, where you're really having conversation. You are getting into the depths. You're talking about the whys behind the whats. You're going into all of those things. Now, after an hour, if you feel like, I'm really getting to know this person, I'd love to get to know them more, I don't want you to keep on talking. Because if you do, then it can become too much, and you really could exhaust too many of your conversation options, or you could get bored. Or it can go into the sexual, or it can go into so many different places. So
I think it can go into attachment before you're really ready to be attached, especially when there's incessant communication, which oftentimes happens, especially with long distance dynamics, versus someone you could meet literally within an hour of the phone call kind of thing.
Absolutely. So so you'll have the phone call, and then it's, I'm really enjoying our call. I'm loving getting to know you. I'd love to actually meet you in person. And now, then,
excuse me, but can a woman, since my audience is mostly women watching this, how do you feel about women initiating that versus the man?
So I want women can walk the horse to the water, but don't force them to drink, right? So you can say, I'm really enjoying our conversation. I would love to get to know you in person.
Okay. ...
So in your mind, it's ... And if they're like, yeah, cool, then you
not
can
necessarily point blank ask, but leading by example, so to speak.
That's right. And if he's like, yeah, that sounds great, and then doesn't ask you, then you can say, let me know when you're ready to take me out. So you keep on doing these things. And if he doesn't ask you, then you can just be like, I'm so confused. We had a really great conversation and you never asked me on a date, and I don't know why. Now, the reality is maybe he didn't ask you because he doesn't have the confidence to. Not because he doesn't like you, but because he doesn't know how to ask you. So never make assumptions. It's better to ask, lean into the awkward. If something doesn't feel right, if something feels off, if they're not doing what you want them to do, lean into it. Ask them why. Now, here's the other scenario. On the phone, they say, hey, I really want to take you out. We should go out. What works for you? How about Saturday? And you don't want to say, you know what? I don't like you, because that just feels terrible. Then what you can say is, oh, you know, that sounds like a really interesting idea. I'm pretty busy this week. Let me check my schedule and I'll send you a text. Then you send them a text and you say, this is like always what you say also after a date if you don't like them and don't want to go out again. You send a text saying, it was really nice getting to know you. You seem like a great person. I just don't feel like we are a romantic match. That's it.
And I wish you all the best.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to say anything else. If they're like, what's wrong with you? Delete, block. You owe them nothing. Even if they took you on a date and you don't feel a match, you owe them nothing. So you don't have to explain why you're not interested. Now, that being said, I do have some male clients who will have over and over, like, I keep being rejected. I don't understand why. And I've said, you know what? There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, just out of curiosity, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but can you just let me know, like, is there something that I did that was offensive? Is there something that makes it so that you weren't attracted to me? And if it's a real, like, you know, constructive ask and you feel like giving it to them, give it to them. But if not, no need.
Do you think doing FaceTimes and Zoom calls would eliminate some of those problems if there's an attraction issue? I'm curious on what you think about that.
Okay, so if it is a set FaceTime or Zoom, yes. But if it is just a random out of the blue, then no. You cannot, and they cannot interrupt your personal space by calling you on FaceTime and expect you to answer or getting upset that you didn't.
No.
And that's actually another study that was done with eHarmony, is that people find it offensive when someone FaceTimes them out of the blue. That it's like, it's rude. Now, that being said, people are now these days, as soon as they're getting a phone number, immediately picking up to call to show, I want you, I'm interested in you, and I'm going to push this. And I have mixed feelings on that. It's a trend of what people are doing.
So I want to shift gears, and in a few minutes, I'm going to take questions from our audience, but I want to talk about practical romance. And I believe you and I kind of share a similar philosophy. So can you share with everybody what that is? And I really want to dive into this because there's some really juicy nuggets talking about practical romance.
Okay, so the idea of practical romance is another concept that eHarmony found in their study for 2025, which is that because of how expensive it is to live these days, people are like, you know what? Let's just get practical and move in together. And I call it the make or break move in strategy.
Okay.
Because now you're not going to do it after the first date, but maybe after 5 dates.
Really? No, come on, not that.
Yeah, well, after 5 dates is the make or break vacation date. So make or break vacation date after 5 dates. You go on a vacation for a weekend to really get to know somebody. But the truth is, you move in with roommates after maybe you interview them and then you move in together. Now, the make or break move in strategy doesn't mean you are moving into the same bed together. You might just be moving it. If there's 2 bedrooms, you might have a roommate situation, whatever it is that makes sense for you. But the study shows that people are willing to move in together quickly to save money and get to know each other really well at the very beginning. And if it's not a match, they move out and move on.
Well, let me ask you, because I can see that happening for a younger demographic, since my demographic is the over 45-year-old crowd that have children and more complex lives. I don't know if I can see it as practical as that for that
No,
age
when you
demographic.
have young children or children
Yeah.
who are living in the house, no.
Okay.
There are people who are empty nesters
Yeah.
and they're renting and they're trying to save money and they
Yeah.
want to do that and find a roommate, that's fine.
Yeah.
So it's really all it is it's what's right for you.
Sure.
There are no I should do this. Stop shoulding.
Yeah.
Stop shoulding yourself and stop shoulding everyone else. It's not about anyone's opinion. It's about what feels right to you first, and then to you too. So it's about how you communicate, what the intention is behind it. But definitely a make or break vacation date on the 5th date where you go out of town and you get to know who someone really is, because the dirt comes out when you're out of town.
Well,
and
so I want to dive into this a little bit from a couple different vantage points. So first off, I know most people hearing this are going to be like resistant.
I see some people who are like, check your state laws. You could end up in a squatter situation. And yes. Yeah.
So I have a slightly different take on it. And I believe that when two people decide that they're going to get to know each other at a deeper level, maybe they decide that they're going to be physically intimate with one another. I believe in, if you're going to be physically intimate on a regular basis, that you agree to monogamy and in addition agree to exclusivity. My strategy is a little different and I want your take on this, but I believe that if circumstances allow for it, you spend 2 weeks in one person's home, you spend 2 weeks in another person's home, or at least 1 week at a minimum, just to get a feel for what this person is like in their day-to-day life. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Jonathan, I can't do that. I'm dating someone 50 miles away, or
totally unrealistic, interesting idea, but unrealistic.
Yeah. But my point is to actually spend a significant amount of time together as soon as you possibly can.
Definitely.
To kind of ferret out who this person is, because to me, dating is about getting to the truth of another human being. I mean, that's that's the purpose of dating, is to get to and when I say truth, when we say get to know someone, but the truth of who this person is. And are we a good fit for one another? So while that strategy, I'm not saying that as an absolute, but the concept of it is to actually move faster, only because I believe, Laurel, our current dating environment is almost this long drawn out version of friends with benefits. I mean, most people today find themselves in situationships or casual relationships at best, because they're not intentional in the process. Do you agree?
I agree with that. Now, the way that you would do that, if moving into someone's home or life for a week doesn't make sense, it's really focusing on the in-betweens. The in-betweens are the breadth of a relationship. So it is the chores. It is the cooking dinner. It is the slog of life. It's the dealing with all of the bullshit together and how you deal with it together. And that is that's the reality of the majority of a relationship, are the in-betweens. That's why I call it the breadth of the relationship. The big things are nice. The in-betweens are the best. When you can just sit there and be bored together, what does that look like? Are you a major extrovert and I'm a massive introvert? How does that work together? So that is something that's important. Another thing that's important is, in terms of the situationships and the friends with benefits and all of these things, this is another reason why, for me, the phone date, first date is essential, because I want my first date to be a first date. Traditional, romantic first date, where we're both going to dress up. Look, we have already pre-qualified each other on the phone. I've already done my research on you. You've done your research on me. Most of the time, we both do it secretly. We're not saying like, hey, I'm looking up your photos. But the fact is, people do it. Then I want to go and have a nice romantic meal. There's a reason why the shows The Bachelor and all of those other shows have such romantic environments. They are literally setting the stage for romance. When you are in an environment where you can have deep, intimate conversation, where you can break the touch barrier because you're sitting at a foretop and you're sitting kitty corner from each other. So you can like knock elbows or knees, where you're leaning into each other, where there's dark lighting and beautiful, deep, rich colors around you. That is setting the stage for romance. When you have to put effort into your look, when you're dressing up and they're dressing up and putting your best foot forward, that your first date sets the expectation for the rest of the relationship. I want effort in my relationship. So I'm going to put effort in my first date, because that's what I expect.
But that's because you've done your pre-qualifying.
Because you've done your pre-qualifying first. Yes.
Yeah. If you haven't done that,
then you shouldn't go on a first date.
Say that one more time for everybody.
If you have not done your pre-qualifying first, you should not go on an in-person first date, because you are wasting the date. Because the reality of first dates is maybe 20% goes into a second date. Yeah. And that's because if you're maybe, maybe. And so what you're doing is you're throwing away the possibility of something great. If you're going on a date where you're sitting at a coffee shop and it's bright lighting and the person next to you is working and it's loud and you can't really hear each other and you don't want to talk about intimate things and you don't want to fly your red flags there because of the environment, you are not going to feel anything for them. And you're going to walk away and be like, there was no chemistry. Well, obviously, because you weren't in an environment for it. In order for two people to connect, now chemistry is a separate thing, but in order for two people to connect and for their hearts to open, you need to have heart-opening conversations. Heart-opening conversations are red flag conversations. And you can only do that in an environment where you feel safe to do that. Now, this is where the U strategy comes in, the letter U. So the top of the U is like the buffer. So this is where it's, nice small talk, and then you drop down into vulnerability. Now it's only a U, it's not a V, so you're not dropping into vulnerability and popping back up. But and you can use the U strategy for any hard conversations. So you're nice, you're complimenting, you're talking about the wonderfulness of your life, or, my ex and I, we broke up. It really sucked, and this is what happened, and it hurt really bad. And then this is what I learned from it, and I'm better because of it and ready to move forward in my life. So the two tops.
I'm going to jump in. That requires a fair amount of emotional intelligence, though, to be able to look at your past relationship, take ownership for your part of what went wrong, and then say, this is how I grew from it. I mean, and by the way, I'm in full agreement with you. Sure. I know most humans aren't even that aware of.
And that's why it requires work before you go on a date.
Yeah.
Just like a job interview. Before you go on a date, do your work. Think about it. Like, what do I want to tell them about me? What do I want to extract from them? I want to learn from them why they broke up with their ex. I want to learn from them what they did wrong in their relationship. I want to learn from them how they grew because of it. Well, if I want that from them, I need to give that. I can't expect that from them if I'm not going to give that to them too. Yeah. So that's where that U strategy comes in. And if you're thinking about it in the shape of the U, it might not be, and I did this, and it might just be, we broke up and cut it. I found out that he was cheating on me, and I was so ashamed, and I had to end it, and I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment, and I'm happier now because of it. So there was no responsibility taken here, but it was shame, sadness, cheated on. This is all what was in the depth.
Person's heart, because like you talked about it, heart opening questions.
My heart just now opened because I was talking about something that was painful. Now, because I opened my heart, I'm going to say now what about you?
Yeah.
What, did you have any bad relationships? Now you're going to tell me about when you were heartbroken. Now what's going to happen? Your heart's going to open. Now we are two open hearts sitting across from each other. We're going to feel something for each other, at least a connection, least a connection. And that's what you want.
By the way, okay, I'm going to move on really quickly. By the way, we're going to take questions. So folks who are watching, if you have a question, write the word question in the chat box and post the question there after. Or you can purchase a super sticker, super chat. There's a little $ in the chat box. All the money's from, just click the little $. All the money's from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Asley. That's a picture of him right there with his brother, Colin. He's my son who passed away over 6 years ago. And in his honor, we donate to causes like the Hoffman Process, Insight Institute, and scholarships to coaching as well. So our goal tonight is $50 for the Connor Asley Scholarship Fund. Don't forget to hit that little $. Laurel, we have a few questions already. Trista's in the house. Late to the show. But would you recommend we focus on if we have, but would you recommend we focus on if we have chemistry and compatibility with the person? Seems relationships either are one or the other, but not both equally. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so chemistry shows in the brain in the same location as cocaine. Yeah. So it actually feels like you're on a drug. If you think about, I've never done cocaine, okay, but this is what I've heard.
I'm guilty of it, so I can own it.
I honestly am not, but I've dated addicts, so I've known from what they've told me. But I have been on chemistry before, and I know what that feels like. And what that feels like, you're flushed, your heart is racing. I have hyperhidrosis, so my hands sweat, my armpits sweat, like I'm all freaked out. So when you're on chemistry, and it is when you're on chemistry, then you feel like, you're high. You cannot wait to talk to them. You are not talking about the depths of things. The problem with chemistry is that it's fleeting, like fireworks. So connection is what I prefer. Connection is where is the you. Connection is the why behind the what. Connection is what is deeper and more lasting. Because if you have a connection with someone, even if it ends up not being a romantic connection, you still can connect. So you actually need to be careful of chemistry. If you feel like you're getting into that chemical space, you need to step back and remember the 3 H's. Now, across the board, you should date with the 3 H's. It's another one of my equations. So it's dating head first. You date head first so that you can be really clear. Have clear conversations, ask questions, share information about yourself. It also makes it so that you don't come across as desperate because, you know what, I'm interested to see if I'm interested. I don't know if I'm interested yet. You haven't earned my interest yet, but I am interested to see if I'm interested in you. So it pulls you out of the desperation, of the insecurity, and makes it super heady, super intellectual. So you date head first before you let your heart in. Your head tells you this person is a good person, and you can start to open your heart. And then you go to your hormones. Head, heart, hormones, right in order. So hormones is sex. Now, that being said, some people have sex on the first date. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. If that's all, if that's what it is, and that's okay. And look, I've had sex on the first date and it has turned into a lasting, wonderful relationship, and I got lucky. And I've had sex on the first date and never talked to them again, and had sex on the 30th date and never talked to them after the sex. So nothing is guaranteed. Sex is not anything that's going to determine your relationship. But still, It's protecting you because sex also is, you can be exposed to a lot of other things because of sex. So date head first, go to your heart, go to your hormones across the board.
I'm in full agreement. I prefer, and I look at it as being objective. When you say head first, I'm being objective. I don't want to be ruled by my lower chakra or the little head, so to speak. And certainly the heart, I think, is something, I don't want to say needs to be earned, but certainly something it isn't going to happen right from day one. It's something that's going to evolve over a bit of time. So,
it needs to be safe, right? Like for me, you need, so I have a list of needs that every single person needs. It's 35 needs. It's a lot of needs. The first 3 are safe, sexy, and seen. You need to feel safe. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially. You're not going to know if you're safe unless you're having conversations and dating head first. Safe allows you to feel sexy. If, most women can't orgasm unless they feel totally safe. And physically, emotionally, spiritually safe. Then they can feel sexy.
By the way, you said 35. This is my list, by the way. I have 2 pages full of stuff.
Well, it's a list of 35, and I put it on all men and women. And across the board, men and women have these 35 needs.
Oh, you're talking about this is a generalized thing.
Those are a general needs list.
I came up for myself.
Yes. No. This is a general needs list, and it goes in depth with everything.
Really quickly, is that on your website?
It's not, but it's something that you can get from my coaching, or if you want to, you can email me and I'm happy to send you the list.
Okay, really quickly, everybody, the link below to connect with Laurel will be in the show notes. So if you want to connect with her after this, check out the links below. So we have a few more questions here. We've got Annika in the house. What if the guy doesn't look the same as his pics, but totally different? What is the strategy on a first date?
So it is very common for men to lie with their photos, generally, or not generally, but frequently. I see that men who say that they're 5'8" are really 5'6". So they'll lie about age, weight, height, everything.
Oh, women do this too. Come on.
They do. True. But we're not talking about women.
Okay.
But regardless. So one thing that I like to do, now we briefly mentioned not overly communicating before a date. I do not like texting before a date unless the only purpose of a date is to figure out the time and location for the date. That being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with being like, hey, super excited to see you. Here's a photo of me right now. Like, hi, send me a photo of you right now so I can see, so we can show that we're excited to see each other. So you can do that. Another thing is having that first date phone date, and you can mid-date, if you feel like it's going well, you can say, hey, how about switching to FaceTime? I'd love if you're available to do that. Or if you can't figure out a date for a week, and maybe you make it so that it's a week before you figure out your first in-person date, then you can say, it's going to be a whole week before we can meet each other in person. What do you think about scheduling a second phone date, but this time a FaceTime date, so that we can get to know each other on a different level? Okay. But the question is, what if they show up and they look different? If they do that, it's also, I do have a 10-point attraction system. So it is a 10 points of attraction that are required in order for you to be with somebody. Looks is 1 point. Now, they lied about their looks, and that sucks. And what's the why behind it, right? So you might say, I'm sorry to say this, but I do feel like you look a little bit different in your photos than in real life. And I'm not trying to be a bitch, but that's just the reality. Did you take those photos a long time ago? Or, what's behind that? So don't be afraid to ask the why. I remember when I went on.
Let me ask you a question though. You are unafraid of being radically honest, to be transparent. Like, you're unafraid. A lot of people would be afraid to say that.
Yes. So You need to be confidently vulnerable.
Okay.
Right? So I didn't say it in a way of like, what the fuck? Like, you do not look like your photos, right? It's, you know what? I'm sorry to say this. I'm just wondering. So see how I'm doing it with a smile? It makes it so much softer. And this is also the you strategy, right? Like, I'm really enjoying getting to know you. You're a really great guy, but I feel like you just don't look exactly like you looked in the photos. Is there like, what happened? Is there something behind that? What's the why, right? So you're just going down for a second, but you're smiling to soften it a little bit. But the reality too is I'm gonna lean into the awkward. I'm gonna ask the hard questions because I want to know the answer. And what if I judge you because you put the old photo up and you could have been the love of my life? But I'm going to judge you because of that one mistake. Because maybe they're insecure. Because maybe they haven't had any photos taken of themselves. And like they just got back into the dating scene and they put their old profile up. And they feel kind of nervous about that they did that. Like, ask the question. And what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
That's why I'm going to be totally honest. As long as I'm doing it in a nice way, what's the worst that could happen? That they're like, you bitch, how are you going to call me out?
Well, I think the other benefit is if nothing else, you're practicing, radical honesty. You're practicing vulnerability, authenticity, transparency, because when you're in a relationship, you better have those skills, because the reality is we have a lot of human beings afraid to be vulnerable. And why do you think, well, you and I both know why many relationships fail because of that. Okay, we have Kristen.
Behind every healthy couple is a lot of hard questions. Okay. And that is the truth.
Amen to that. Okay, Kristen is in the house. My boyfriend thinks if we make a commitment then that's a commitment. I don't agree, because we are not engaged. When is all in really all in? There are financial and parental responsibilities.
Boyfriend thinks if we make a commitment, then that's a commitment.
Well, okay, so let me preface this just to give you some context the way I think this is going. So I believe the first level of commitment mostly is either monogamy and exclusivity. Like, that's the first level of commitment these days. And I look at the second level of commitment is actually operating as a team together, like integrating into each other's lives, helping each other out, whether it's with family or friends, that sort of thing, starting in a teammate fashion through integration. And I look at the third level as all in, like I'm all into this relationship.
Yep.
I think where she's going is differentiating with, I think we think of the word commitment, but a lot of people are confused as to what that means. I'd be curious to know what you think of commitment and what that means.
So yeah, there are levels to commitment. There's we're no longer on the apps.
Yeah.
We're exclusive. We are boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
We're engaged. We're married. Those are the different levels of commitment. So regardless of what it is, it's commitment to the commitment. Commitment to that commitment. Whatever that commitment is, it's the commitment. And you need to have a conversation of what is that commitment and what does that commitment mean to you? So if the commitment to the commitment is that neither of us are on the apps, well, that is the commitment to this. Well, I'm going to be committed to that commitment. If the commitment to the commitment is we are exclusive, we both need to be committed to that commitment. What does that mean? Does that mean that my red light is on? Or does that mean my orange light is on? Does that mean that if someone comes and they're attractive and I might want to explore that I'm allowed to explore that or not? Are we boyfriend and girlfriend? What does that mean? Now, the reality is, and I think a lot of people look at it this way, is when you are married, it is harder to end it. When people are married, they fight harder to stay together because of the legal and because it is hard and the finances and all that stuff. Like people tend to fight harder when they're married. Some people are fine just being engaged. Like that's the commitment that they want. So what I would ask you is, what is it that you need? What is the why behind I need a commitment? And what is the why behind his I need a commitment? And where is the wall? What don't you want to commit on and why not? What does he not want to commit on and why not? So what's the wall and why the wall? Yeah. Is the wall, I don't want you to meet my children? Is the wall, I don't want to be financially attached? Is the wall, I don't want you to meet my family? And why? Why? So it's going into that. Because commitment's different to everyone.
By the way, I own the URL committed to commitment.
No way.
I swear to God. And I think I have variations.
Damn it. I would have bought that. I buy them all so fast.
Because the idea is, are you really committed? Like when people say, I want a relationship, I mean, like, and it's so benign, and like the word relationship can be so ambiguous, you know, but are you really committed to wanting to be in a committed relationship?
But more than that, what does that mean to you? You know, exactly. It's what is a relationship to you? What is a partnership to you? What does, if we're in a relationship, does that mean you're going to go pick up my kids from school or not? Yeah. Does that mean that when my son is being an asshole, that you can be like, hey, Finley, stop being so rude to me, or not? You know, like where are the lines, especially when kids are involved? Believe me, I've been a single mom dating. I know how hard this can be. And it can get very tricky, and it has to be navigated. And every relationship is different when you are a single parent dating. Yeah.
Since my audience is not necessarily well, I would say it ranges from people that have young children to empty nesters. Yeah. You know, today I've just observed a lot of people just want companionship. They want connection. They want sex, but they really want it on a limited basis, just enough to satisfy them. But the minute you start to get involved with someone, you know, attachment begins to set in, you know, you start to bond with a person, you start catching feelings. I think if you're not committed to commitment, it can be problematic.
People have an idea of this is what I want until they're in it. And then they're like, oh, but I want a little more, or, oh, I want a little less. But it is constant. So I like couples to have weekly check-ins. Yeah. So every week you have a set conversation where you talk about 5 pillars, whatever those pillars are that you need to talk about. And you go into the depths of, hey, let's do our check-in. How we doing? How are we in terms of our romance? How are we in terms of the sexual? How are we in terms of communication, in terms of collaboration, partnership, all of these different things? Yeah.
Okay, right, listen, I just want to acknowledge a couple super stickers. I want to acknowledge Annika for the $5 super sticker. Thank you so much. I want to acknowledge Arlene for the $1.49 super sticker. And Shannon is in the house, and she just gave us a $2.99 super sticker. So we have another question that came in. Kathy, Canadians in the house, unless your date is going to last 3 hours or more, going into, like your example, why we each broke up with our ex, isn't it going to be a waste of time when that could have been found out on the phone?
So you could have that conversation. I don't want you, this is also where the you comes in. I don't want that conversation to be more than 20 minutes. Because if it is, then your date is about your ex. So it's not about what happened with my ex. It really is about me. So I might say like, yeah, you know, my ex and I was married, and I found out that he had a major porn addiction, and he would go to Vegas and spend so much money on strippers, and you know, he started doing some drugs, and it made me really uncomfortable. And I would ask him to stop, and he wouldn't. And I was committed to being married, and I tried to be a good wife, and I did all of these things. And, it made me lose my confidence, and I had to end it. And I felt really ashamed, and my parents didn't talk to me because of it. And after that, I had to do the work and build my confidence back up and realize that I was a beautiful woman. Honestly, I started doing striptease classes, and I've gotten into a place now where I feel really confident about my body. Okay, how long was that? Maybe that was 3 minutes.
Yeah,
that is what you should do, right? So I didn't go on and on and on. I just, it's so, and then they might ask questions, but I'm not sitting there talking shit about my ex. Yeah, I did mention strip clubs and things, but I'm not like, he's such a fucking asshole. I'm just, these are facts. And, and this is the work I've done after that. Yeah. Don't go and drag through the mud about your ex. It could be a 1 hour conversation and you're still going into it. Now, the reason why it's important is because, so here's an example.
Okay.
I went on a date with this guy, and I knew I wasn't interested in going on another date with him. So because of that, I did not tell him that I had been divorced, because I didn't feel the need to show my red flags, because he doesn't need to know about me if I'm not going out with him again. So I didn't. So after the date, he called me and he's like, hey, just wanted to let you know that I'm not going to go out with you again because we have some mutual friends and I found out that you're divorced. Okay. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, the fact that you're going to judge me for being divorced without asking me what happened says a lot more about you than it does about me. You didn't even give me an opportunity to ask me what happened in my divorce. And he's like, okay, fine. So what is it then? So I told him, and he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I definitely want to go out. Now I understand you so much better. I definitely want to go out with you again. And I said, and I don't want to go out with you because I see that I didn't want to go out with you anyway, which is why I didn't tell you I was divorced.
You didn't tell him that, did you?
No, I did.
Oh, you did?
Okay. I did tell him, because I wanted him to know I didn't share that information because I didn't want to go out with you. Had I wanted to go out with you again, I would have shared that information because it's important information. And it's important information because where were you? Where are you? Where are you going? You need to know about what happened with my ex so that you know what my triggers are. And also so that I know if you're not okay with someone who's been divorced. This is very important information for us moving forward.
So you said something that we didn't really touch upon earlier, and I do want to take a few more questions. Really quickly, I want to acknowledge Patty for the $2.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. Knowing your own red flags, and I think that's kind of what you alluded to, is knowing what could be a red flag to somebody else about you. Yeah. I think that should be like everybody's assignment. If you're watching this right now, you should put together a list of what you think might be a red flag for someone else. I
have an idea. Okay. I have an idea, because this is something I do with my clients. Okay. I have them come to me and tell me what their red flags are, and I tell them why they're not. And the reason is because if someone's like, well, I'm really controlling and I like things the way I like them, and that's a red flag. And I'm like, okay, so tell me a little bit more. Or I'll say, so you think this is a red flag? Okay, how about this? I like things the way that I like them because I've always had to be in control of my own life. Yeah. And that's why I've become successful, and I have a great career and a wonderful, group of friends and a great life. But the reality is I am looking to be in a relationship with someone with whom I don't have to be in control all the time. I know that things are going to be okay, and I don't have to make them okay. So part of figuring out your red flags is not only putting what you think is going to be a red flag, but also learning it's actually not a red flag. It's actually a strength. The fact that you've been divorced, or that you have had kids out of wedlock, or that you had to file bankruptcy, or that you had a drug problem, or that you are in debt, or that whatever it is, if you look at why it happened and what you have done since then all of a sudden it is not a red flag. It has turned into a strength. And it says so much about you. And if the other person thinks that it's a red flag, then fuck them.
By the way, for those, one of the reasons why I like Laurel is she's a little bit like me. We use expletives to enhance the sentence. That's not meant to be low vibrational or in the gutter.
Totally not.
It's
No,
just
it is.
we like to enhance things.
And it's also like, I've seen so many people, you're so much, then look for less. That's okay.
Yeah.
but really, it's about being you. It's being unapologetically you. And not being afraid that someone's going to judge you. And look, I have clients who have a hard time with me cussing, and I won't say fuck too much around them because it's just like for them, it grates them. And I understand and respect that.
Oh, by the way, I've gotten so much flack over it for the years, but this is who I am. This is who we are. We're going to take one last question.
Yes.
Okay. What is your opinion about a significant age difference? I've noticed younger men are interested in older women. Should it be based on maturity? I can meet a guy the same age as my son. What are your thoughts?
Okay. This is actually a trend of older women and younger men. It has been forever, older men and younger women. Now, so it is, yes, maturity. It also is attitude and energy. So one thing that I've heard about is that older men and older women like younger men and younger women, not because they're younger, but because they're youthful energy.
Yeah.
So it is, I want to have a youthful energy. I want to be with someone who has that youthful energy, who has that zest for life. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have zest. It's a bad comparison and it's true. My mom has 2 dogs, or my parents have 2 dogs. One of them died and they got a younger dog. What happened to the middle-aged dog? Suddenly had a ton of energy, suddenly had a rebirth of life because she was around a new, fun, youthful energy. So it's not just about that. Sometimes, yes, it is. You want just a hot, sexy, young body. Thank you. Thank you, Woodland, for liking the cussing. I appreciate you. But it might feel uncomfortable to date someone who's your son's age. There is that MILF Manor, which I love that show.
Oh, yeah, I've watched that show.
Yeah. But it's also, if you are attracted, maybe a couple years older than your son, but it's also maybe having a conversation with your son first of, I don't want to be with a fucking old man who makes me feel old. But I'll be with a man who's older if he has a youthful energy. That's fine. But that's why I might be attracted to younger men. It's not the age, it's the youthfulness. So that's
younger men are attracted to older women because they appreciate the maturity level of an older woman.
That's right.
Sometimes there's less complications compared to women their own age. There's a variety of different things, but I think
it's the why behind it. So it's just having clarity on your why behind it. And that's it. And then the other thing is, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And I know it's so easy to say and so hard to do, but that is where all of us need to get in all areas of who we are and our relationships. And that's what goes back to the 10-point attraction system. It is 1 point for looks, maybe 1 point for age, 1 point for money, 1 point for can I admire him? 1 point for, does he communicate well? 1 point for, whatever your 10 points are. That is what you're looking for. You're not just looking for hot. You're not just looking for rich. You're not just looking for funny. You lose if you only get hot. You lose if you only get rich. You lose if you only get those a couple of things. So think about what it is that you really want and need. And maybe that guy's not hot. And maybe that guy's not rich. And maybe that guy isn't those things that people say, why aren't you with someone who's better looking? Well, because, he is really fucking hot to me. And you know why? Because he makes me feel so seen. And he makes me feel so safe. And for me, that's sexy. I've never had more orgasms than I do with this guy, who maybe his face isn't hot, But this man makes me feel like I am a goddess. And that's what I want.
Well, on that, I want to, since we're going to wrap up really quickly. Kathy gave us a $10 super sticker. I want to thank that. Laurel.
Thank you.
I'm so glad we were able to connect tonight. We covered some really important topics. I think you and I both agree. It's good to pre-qualify people ahead of time so you can actually go out on a first date and have a fun, romantic, good time.
Totally.
Because you pre-qualified someone. And that's ask those hard questions, all the hard questions before you get, what did you say? Head first, heart, hormones.
Yeah.
I love the 3 H's.
Go in order. The 3 H's. Yeah.
Well, listen, can I reach into the camera and give you a big hug of appreciation?
Yes.
Oh,
and kisses on the cheeks.
Folks, if you want to connect with Laurel, there's links below to connect with Laurel. You can go to her website. She's got a YouTube channel. She's on Instagram. You can follow her on social media. I think
you can send me an email too, laurel@laurelhouse.com. I don't mind. Send me an email. I'll send you that list of 35 needs. I'll send you, the dating equations. I'm happy to send you stuff.
Oh. Well, thanks, sweetheart. Big hugs to you. Thanks for everyone who was on. Thanks for everyone who donated. I wish you all a super duper wonderful, fantastic evening. Bye now.